Hello and welcome to part 6 of the DIY Apache Collective build series. Today we're going to be building the gearbox, which will be mounted in this aluminum box. It will contain all the mechanical parts for the collective, and for this part of the build you will need the box itself. It's a 1590 1590 box, aluminum box. If you search for it in AliExpress, you will easily find it. You will also need two of the bearings that we spoke in the first video. These are the ones. This is already inserted in one of the printed parts. These are 30 millimeters inner diameter and 42 millimeters outer diameter. You will need two of them. You will need several printed parts like this one here, which is the bottom part. This one goes at the bottom of the box. After that goes the 80 teeth gear. It will be held by a piece of aluminum tube. So let's just introduce it. This is the aluminum tube that I'm going to be using. As I mentioned in the first video, I just got one piece 300 millimeters long, 30 centimeters long, and I cut it to length. This one is about 78 millimeters long, but it can be shorter. It can be, I actually cut it a little bit longer just to be, to have some room, but it's a little bit long and it can be easily 70 millimeters long. So you could remove almost 1 centimeter out of it, but it's going to work fine. It's going to work fine just like this. So this is a 78 millimeters, but you can cut it to 70. Don't cut it shorter, otherwise you may not have enough length. So this is going to be inside here in this order. After the gearbox, which will be connected to the potentiometer with a smaller 12 teeth gear, which goes in this small slot here. So this one here. So after the bigger gearbox, we are going to be adding the friction ring. It's this piece over here. This piece has an M4 nut fitted into this space, and then M4 bolt. Let me see how long this is. I think it's 40 millimeter. Might be wrong though. No, sorry, it's a 70. M4 by 70 bolt. This will tighten the friction ring to the friction that you desire. And it's coming from the outside, so the head of the bolt is going to be protruding outside. You will see that during today's video. So that is the next piece. And then the last piece is the other bearing. It fits into this piece, and as you can see, there is one side where you fit the bearing, and the other side it's closed. So this side goes up. Oops. It's a tight fit, but that's what we want. And the lid to which we will drill a hole, it's the last part obviously, but this is the order we're gonna be building this. So let's remove everything. And for tools, We're not gonna be needing soldering iron today or anything like that. This is everything that we're going to need. A drill. I use a battery powered drill. A few bits. I have, in this case, a 2.5, 3, and the biggest one I have for metal is an 8.1 millimeter. I also have several step bits, and I'm gonna be using this one for the hole in the lid, because I need to drill a hole that is at least 30 millimeters in diameter, and this one is up to 32. So this is the one that I'm gonna be using. And also a set of files. We're gonna be filing some of the holes. So let's get to it. By the way, this is the bottom part, as I mentioned. This goes at the very bottom. It has some mounting holes for screws. As you can see here, the holes in some of the sides, well, in this part, all of them have a shape to fit an M3 nut in there. So it will be screwed from behind with bolts. The top part, the one that goes into the lid, is screwed to the lid. So this piece will be screwed into the lid and has the same distance between holes. So what I did to use as a template is I printed the first few layers of this piece, and then I have some sort of a template. You could probably use this as well and just, mark the holes with this, but I just prefer to have a thinner piece of scrap print to make it as a template. So that's what I'll be using. I think it's a little bit tight fit, so I will need a screwdriver or something to remove it from here. But so for now, I'm just gonna mark where the holes are going to be needed. So with some fine Sharpie, I'll just mark the holes. If you notice, I marked 6 holes. You can see there's 2 other holes here. These holes are the ones that I use to mount to the chair. So in the finished collective, you can see I have a couple of bolts with these nuts here that you can screw to the chair. And this part is a little bit more creative. You can do whatever fits best for you. So if you need to drill different holes or think of a different solution to mount the collective to your particular chair, then feel free to just drill the holes that you need. So as I said, I've already marked the holes, but this is tight against the box, so I need to remove it with a screwdriver. Let's just drill those holes. Those are the easy ones, so let's do those first. In terms of drilling, I usually prefer to drill with a smaller bit before, so it doesn't, slip around the hole that much. By the way, this being aluminum, you can use wood tools to cut and drill, but I'm just using a metal drill. It's better if you have it. So let's just do that. And I'm seeing that I will probably have some troubles. Yeah, I'm gonna have troubles drilling the top holes because they are too close to the box. So what I'll do is drill the 4 middle ones, then I can screw this from the back to align the holes, then I'll mark the outer holes from behind and drill them from the back. So let's just do that. I'm using the 2.5 drill bit first to start the hole, and then I'll enlarge it with the 3mm bolts, because as I mentioned, we're going to be screwing the bottom part with 3mm M3 screws. So I'll center as much as I can the drill. Start slow, so the drill starts biting a little bit without sliding. And once it has started, I can speed up a little bit. So there's already a mark from the bit. Now it's better if you don't have your hand behind, because when the drill goes through, you don't want your hand there. So let's see, how can I hold it? Let's do it like this. My bits are not very sharp, so it might take a little bit. If it's a good quality and sharpened bit, it should not take too long. Aluminium is a very soft metal, so you should be able to drill it rather easily. Okay, so now I have the 4 holes enlarged to 3mm. Now I will drop all my aluminum shavings all around. Try to avoid that if you can, but it's okay, I'll vacuum it later. And then I will screw, or at least it doesn't really need to be screwed, just hold the bottom piece at the other side of where it goes, just to be able to mark where the other 2 holes go. So I'll just add a couple of screws. I don't even need to use nuts yet, so it's just to use them as guides. And now I can mark from the outside where those other holes go. So let's do that. And then remove the screws. And then I can drill those other 2 holes. So let's do that, the mounting holes. Okay, so now that I have all the holes drilled, I can screw this part. So before screwing it, let's just add the 4 M3 nuts in the slots. This might be, I think, I did print this a little bit tight. So one thing you can do is just use the drill and a bit for a bit that fits the screw. And what I sometimes do is to fit the nut inside the hole if it's a tight fit, like in this case. I will start it first. It's started now in the screw. Then push it a little bit down and continue screwing. So as you can see, the nut just went into the plastic. So let's do that for the other 3, sorry. Okay, so now that we have all the nuts inserted into the plastic, we can go ahead and screw it from behind. We don't want any part of the screw protruding outside of, it needs to be flush or at least a bit shorter from this, because on top of this, obviously, is going to be the 80 teeth piece, And as you can see, if there is a screw protruding, it could scratch or this side collide and prevent the proper movement. The way it is now, only with the nuts just slightly go under the plastic. So now this is flush and can move freely. But if there is a little bit of a screw coming out of it, then there would be no possible movement. 16. I only have 16 and 20 millimeters bolts. 16 are too short, barely too short for the design I have, and 20 are too long. So what I did is add one nut to a 20 millimeter screw, which will shorten it, and then screw it with the nut acting as a spacer. If you have 18 millimeter screws, that should probably make it. And you can also use washers instead. Let's see, with an M3 nut acting as a spacer, the bolt grabs into the nut and it doesn't protrude. It doesn't prevent any movement on top of this piece. So let's do that for the other three. Okay, so this is how it should look like. 4 bolts with 4 nuts acting as spacers, and then this is held down to the box. Let me just add the bearing. There it is. So now, as you can see in the bottom part, there is an elliptic shape, a little bit of an elliptic shape, and a square one. So the elliptic shape is to fit the potentiometer, which has a round base, and that elliptic shape will allow the potentiometer to move sideways. So when we add the gear to the box, we can adjust the tension. So actually we put the potentiometer first, then we put the aluminum tube with the gearbox, and then we can adjust where exactly are we going to place the potentiometer so it doesn't it has a good contact between the two gears. This will be held with this small piece. So the potentiometer will be held with this small piece and some screws down to the bottom piece. That's why it has those rails. Those rails are so you use small wood screws to screw them down, and that is to hold the potentiometer down. But that comes later. And the other one, the square one, is to hold the USB Type B adapter. So this will go here. As you can see, it doesn't fit because we need to drill a hole here for the enclosure to poke out. Right? So not the enclosure, you know, the shell of the port to poke out. But this square slot will hold the PCB of the adapter. So that's what we are going to do next. We need to drill a hole in the side of the box. And since this piece is square, this is why I wanted my biggest metal drill. It is still too small, so the drill is not going to be anywhere near as big as the shell of the board. but that's gonna start, that's only going to be to start the hole, and the square shape, we are going to use the files for. So let's just do that. And this part is a little bit trickier. We have to eyeball it a little bit. So for that, what I do have is one of these. Let me zero it out and see where it does end. So this is the start of the plastic part. Sorry, I'm not showing you. What I'm using is the inside of the measuring tool. I don't care about the value. I just want to set the height of the plastic. So what I'll do is essentially put this piece against the edge of the box, the higher edge, and then drive down the center piece up until the plastic. And this one in particular has a locking nut, so now it doesn't move. I can then turn it around, and I know this is where my plastic piece, the bottom piece, begins. So I know it has to be slightly on top of that. Actually, the square, the base of the square will be there. I don't know if you can see it, but if you kind of mock up the bottom of the shell at the bottom of this piece and flush it a little bit, that's kind of where it needs to be, and it's center in this direction. So that's why I said you need to eyeball it. What I'll do is I'll just place it here flush with the bottom, maybe move it a little bit so it's centered. It's probably around here. And once I'm happy about the approximate location, which is here, I'll hold it in place, and then I can grab my Sharpie and draw the edges. It can be approximate because, as I said, the drill is smaller, the bit is smaller, and we only have to center it. So I have a little bit of a rough shape. I have the bottom part, I have the two sides. I can eyeball a little bit more. It's not that critical at this point. I make sure it's centered, so for that I could actually measure it to make sure it's centered. So this is, at this distance is 90.90, so half of it would be 45.45 approximately. Let's do that. That'll make it. So the center is actually kind of here. I'll just mark an X. And this is the approximate position where I want to do the first drill. So let's do that. So what I'll do is square this hole, essentially. I need to file in a way that I turn this hole into a square. So let's just do that. And by the magic of YouTube, I'm gonna speed this up so you don't have to see me going through this. Okay, although aluminum is a reasonably soft metal, it does take some time, brute force, and sweat to get the job done. But we're already there. During the process, I've been checking from the outside how much did I have to keep doing it, and we reach a point where I can actually fit the shell through the hole. So that's where we want to go. One thing that you may want to do is ignore what I told you about screwing the bottom part already, because for one, you want to get this as clean as possible. Also, if you can, just try to avoid filing with the bearing on, because those bearings need to be lubricated, and metal doesn't fit well with bearings, metal shavings. But anyway, don't screw this in before doing this, because now the issue that I have is that the hole is so tight, it fits, but it's tight, and that's what you like to make it. I mean, you can do it as big as you want if you don't mind, but I like it to be tight so it looks good. But now I cannot fit it through. Maybe I can, let me just try. But yeah, if you force it, you may break the PCB. So yeah, it's better not to screw this in. We're actually going to take it out. So let's just do that. So now I can fit both of them at the same time without forcing the PCB. So I fit this through, and also the bottom part. And here you have the PCB poking out. Actually, let me try to fit it a little bit more. So now let's screw the bottom part again. Okay, so the next step is to add the aluminum tube with the 80 teeth gear. So to do that, we will fit the gear in the middle of the tube approximately. We need to add the bearing now, and then we fit the tube until it touches the bottom. So now it's all the way in. We can push the gear down, and it needs to be flush, as you can see, with the bearing. At this point, we again remove, it came with the bearing, but it doesn't matter, because what we want to do now, since it's a tight fit, this plastic piece is where it needs to be in terms of height. So what we'll do now is mark this hole here, which is the one where the wires will come out from, and this one here, which is the one that we will use for either a bolt, a screw, or a rivet. Doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. So I'm gonna mark that. Okay, it looks good. And then mark the other one. So now that they are marked, I can take this apart. Let's take the bearing first, and then take this piece out. And as you can see, we have the marks that we just did. So now we have to drill those. Let's begin with the screw hole. Good. So now we have the 2.5 hole. Now I'm gonna drill several holes in this area. You could use a Dremel or something else, but the thing is that you need to do a hole approximately this big. This is enough for all the wires that we need to feed through, and it doesn't need to be super perfect. So as long as you have a big enough hole here that aligns with the hole here, we are just gonna feed the wires here. So I'll just drill it in a way that I know I can feed the wires through. As you can see, I've already drilled several holes, 1.5 holes. Now I will enlarge them with the 3mm bit. Okay, so we have a little bit of a bigger hole here. It's looking really ugly. It's not what we want, but we got it started, and that's what we wanted. So now you can get another file and start working on it. So let's just do that. Okay, so the hole doesn't need to be pretty. It only has to have two conditions. One of them, make sure the edges are filed, which in my case I haven't done it yet. So grab a flat file like this one and make sure it's flat in the outside especially. You can also file a little bit with a round one the inside, so you take the sharpness out of it. But the outside, if you don't file it a little bit with a flat file, you're not going to be able to feed it through, because there's going to be a lip and you won't be able to feed it through. So I usually file a little bit both holes in the outside, from the outside, and a little bit also from the inside with a round one to remove the sharpness and avoid the wires that are going to be inside this tube being cut by the sharp corners. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just remove the sharpness out of it, and you can feel it with your finger. So that's probably good enough. Make sure that the holes are aligned. So put the screw hole in place, which is this one here. So now the screw in the plastic piece is aligned with the aluminum hole, with the hole in the tube, and check that the other one also aligns. So if you can see, it does align, but it's not as big as the plastic one. That's okay. It doesn't need to be as big. It only needs to be big enough to fit the two wires that came out from the handle. So in this case, I've already checked it. If you feed them through, just to test, this is the USB one and it's in. The other one, which is going to be for the potentiometer, also fits in. So I already know both wires fit. That's big enough then. So I can remove them now. And next step, if you are going to use a bolt, would be to thread this hole. I did a 2.5 hole with the drill, and since this is a very thin piece of aluminum, I think that should be okay. I'm not very good at threading holes. I'm sorry about that, so don't take my word for it. But I don't have that many bit sizes. I think you are supposed to drill something like a 2.8 for an M3 screw, but I've usually just did a 2.5 because that's the bit I have and it worked for me. So I will thread this hole with a threading tool, and so then I can mount this piece, which will stay like this. So I have a tool like this. It does have an M3 bit. It's not the best tool in the world, so if you have a better one, good for you. but it does the job. So I'm gonna thread the hole now. And ideally you want to lubricate this. I don't have any lubrication right now, but since aluminum is a soft metal, I can just slowly go back and forth and remove material. Try to, and like what I was doing, try to make it as perpendicular as you can. So let me start over again. I hadn't removed much material yet, so I can start over again. And since this one is only 2 millimeters thick, it should not be too complicated. I can already feel that it's not gonna be complicated. The problem about being this thin is that the screw may not be strong enough. In that case, I will use a rivet, but I already went through, so I think I'm gonna be okay. Let me test the thread. Okay, I'm gonna have to shave it again a little bit because threading it, I created a little bit of a lip again. So let me shave it a little bit more. File it, sorry. Yeah, now it feels good. Let me file the inside too. That's more than enough. I will remove all the aluminum dust from it. That's good. And then let me test with any M3 screw. And yeah, it's catching. So let's just screw it. There you go. Align the hole. Where is it? There it is. There it is. And for this one, you just need a very short one. Yes, perfect. Don't over tighten it. It's still against aluminum, so you don't want to screw the thread. It's tight, it's not going to go anywhere. And in this case, the M3x7 screw or bolt went through. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. There's plenty of space here for the cable, so that is just perfect. So for now, this will go here. Next step is going to be adding the potentiometer. So I did something wrong, and is that I fitted the sport gear, but I left the nut of the potentiometer in, and also I need to fit this piece in before the sprocket. So let me just remove that. Hopefully I don't break it. There it is. So I remove the nut now and the washer. I think I might need to enlarge this hole a little bit. So for that, I'll just use an X-Acto knife and make the hole a little bit bigger. Notice that this piece has a small opening to one side, as you can see, the X-Acto knife going through. This is for the small lip that these potentiometers have. They have a vertical lip for alignment, so that side needs to go in there. Yeah, so now the hole is big enough. I can fit the support in with the lip inside the space for it. So I can put the nut back, tighten it. Now I can press fit the socket again, the sprocket gear, whatever you call this. So now the potentiometer should look like this. And now we can actually.
One day later.
So off camera, I have soldered 3 leads to the potentiometer and also added a DuPont connector. This will connect with the grip of the collective, and this is the wire that will be connected to. If you remember this from previous videos, this is connected to ground, VCC, and an analog pin in the Arduino Pro Micro. And the way I soldered it was, this one in particular is orange, red, and brown. And what I did obviously is orange in the analog one, red is VCC, and brown is ground, right? So I use the same colors for the potentiometer. And the important thing here, the most important thing, are not the side pins. It doesn't really matter which way they go. The important thing is that the analog pin, so the orange one, is the one in the middle. That's the signal pin, let's say. So that's what I did here. I bent the pins up a little bit because this will be it in here and there's not much room. So it can slide a little bit, but it not that much, but it's gonna be enough. So let's do that. And now what we will be doing is screwing the potentiometer into the base. I'm going to be using M2 by 8 screws. These are boot screws, so they don't have a regular thread. Instead, they bite into the plastic. So let's just do that. We'll place the aluminum tube with the bigger gear in place. And then all the way down. And then what we want to do is make sure that both gears are making a good connection one with each other, and they twist, you can see. Okay, so let's just screw them in. So now the potentiometer is in place. We can remove this part. And the next step is going to be working on the lid. Now we're gonna start drilling and mounting the pieces that go into the lid. For that, I'm gonna grab the template again. And this doesn't fit as well into the lid because this template is for the base, but you can still eyeball it where it is more or less centered. We need to mark these 4 holes. So let me see what's the best approach. I think the best way to do it is simply eyeball it and center it both vertically and horizontally as much as you can. But it's going to be approximate. It doesn't really matter that much because we are going to have to file. So there's going to be a hole in the center from which this tube is going to come out. And that one we are probably going to need to file it a little bit. So it doesn't really matter if it's not 100% in the center. So what I do is usually is I eyeball the 4 holes here. and you can avoid the template from moving once you have found the center. That helps. Okay, so now that I have the 4 holes, what I will do is grab a ruler and draw the diagonals. That will give me the center point. I don't have a ruler at the moment, so I'll just use the template and draw the diagonals from one hole to another. And that gives me the center point. So now it's time to drill. So now I have the 5 holes drilled. These are 3mm at this point. I have to drill a bigger hole in the center one. And if you remember, this is a 30mm tube, outer diameter. So in theory, with this bit, with a step bit, which goes up to 32mm, the very last one, so I have to go all the way through with this bit. Since it's 32, I should be able to drill a perfect hole. However, if when I drill it's not perfectly perpendicular and the center, I didn't mark it perfectly center, it's slightly moved, when I finish the hole, very likely the center of the bearing will not be completely in the center of the hole. So that's why I said that we will probably have to file it. Doing this by hand is very complicated, and now I've remembered I actually didn't do it all the way by hand in the previous ones. I was trying to do it now, but I just remembered that I didn't do it. This is because the hole is getting bigger and bigger, and the bigger the hole it gets, the more material the drill is taking out of it. So it's scraping all this area and taking material. So it's offering a lot more resistance. So what I actually did is put it in a vise. I don't have a vise at the moment, so I'll just clamp it in a wall in my garden and with clamps. But if you have a vise, just clamp it in the vise. So I'll be back when the hole is done. Okay, I'm back. I also took the chance to clean up a little bit the mat because this process makes a lot of metal shavings. So as you can see, I already have the hole. This is a 32mm hole. So in theory, it should be okay for this hole. However, let me see if it's properly centered or not. Let me just add a couple of screws to line up. So let's put this one, diagonal one. And it's actually probably my best job in this case, so I don't think I'm gonna need to file much, if anything at all. Let me show you with the magnifying glass. It is, let me lower the brightness, very much centered, so that's good. So I think I'm actually only going to file a little bit just to remove the edge of the hole. It's sharp it's not smooth. So I'm just gonna shape, file a little bit the edges, both the inside and the outside. And that probably should be enough, I think. Yeah, I can feel the bearing moving normally. So let me do that. Okay, so now the edges are a little bit rounded. It's safe. Make sure to get yourself rid of any aluminum dust. But yeah, feels good. So this is going to go with the bearing exposed up, because the lid itself is going to hold it, and then the printed part is going to hold it on the other side. And if you notice, let me show you, this part only has space for two nuts to hold it. This is because the friction ring, let me show you, the friction ring only has to have two anchor points as well, right? Because otherwise you would not be able to tighten it from this side, right? So they are going to be opposed. We have two nuts holding it here, and the other two nuts actually are going to hold both this piece here and the friction ring together. So as you can see, two nuts in one side, the other two in the other. And these need to be aligned in one side. So they have to go like this, not like this. So for now, I'm going to introduce two nuts in this piece and bolt it to the lid. Okay, so now that we have both pieces with the nuts where they need to be, let's screw them in place. So let's start with the bearing piece. As I said, two 12mm screws. There it is, one. There's the first one. And the second one. And it's pretty much flush. That's good. And then the friction ring goes with the nuts in the opposite side. Two M3x12s and two M3x20s. This one protrudes just a tiny bit, but that's the only one that I can actually do it. There is a little bit of space between this piece, which goes like that, and this one, so it doesn't really matter in this case that the screw is not fully flush. That is the only one that can be a little bit out. Okay, now all the screws are in, friction ring is in. What's left to do is to add the, where did I put? Here. The M4 by 70 screw in. It's going to be temporarily in for now because we need to find where is this going to be coming out from. So what I'll do is just screw it by hand. Doesn't need to be tight or anything at this moment. And we need to find where is this screw coming out. So if you see the box, this is where the port is coming out to, and usually you will have, well, I do have this facing forward. But if you have your computer in the back, you may want to set it the other way around. And usually you want the friction ring on top of the box. So for instance, in my case, that the port is facing forward, I want the friction ring coming out of this side here. And we need to know where to drill. So to do that, what I do is I align the lid. So it's not gonna close because of the screw, but actually I can align it horizontally and then draw a line. I'm gonna do that right now. And with that, we have the position of the hole horizontally. It's gonna be somewhere in that line. We need to screw this all the way in. So let me do that. Up until here, I'll put the lid where it should be then, flush. So with this slip down this box, and then I have the horizontal position of the hole. And that's gonna be right here. Now I have where I have the exact position where the hole needs to be. So let's drill that. Now the final test is to fit the aluminum tube here. See, all the way in. Then check that the box closes properly and the aluminum tube in that side fits in the bottom bearing. Looks like this piece is just a little bit too thick. So I'm gonna reprint this a little bit shorter because as you can see, when I close the box, it stays open just about maybe 1 millimeter or so. So as I said, I'll reprint this part with this piece a little bit lower, mount it, and then we should be able to close the box. That's going to be in the next episode anyway. Since all the holes are already drilled and we are not going to have to do any more filing or anything else, off camera I'm going to remove all the pieces that we have just mounted and paint the box black. That's a personal preference. You could leave it like this if you want. I just like the look of the box being painted black. So again, next episode we will fully mount the box. We will replace this part and we will attach the box to the grip. So basically the physical mount, the physical build will be 100% complete in the next episode. And there will only be the software part, which will be the very last episode, and that should be a very short video anyway. So thank you all for joining me and see you in the next one.